With a legacy 30 years in the making, Fire Emblem Engage attempts to pay respect to the past while introducing some new ideas of its own. You'll encounter some familiar faces, along with the return of the classic weapon triangle. But you'll also find some new mechanics that undeniably changed the game. But was it able to bring everything together in a way that'll satisfy longtime fans while still engaging newcomers? Let's find out in GameXplain's review of Fire Emblem Engage. Fire Emblem Engage is strikingly beautiful. The world of Elyos is one of the most colorful in the entire series. While Three Houses had a darker atmosphere, befitting its greater war themes, Engage has a sense of levity here without undermining the dire circumstances, even if the main character is perhaps a little goofy compared to the rest of the game. Their name is Alir, and they wake up from 1,000 years of slumber, ignorant to the world around them. But it doesn't take them long to find out that they are in fact the Divine Dragon, who has been placed in the world to do two things: stop the return of the Fell Dragon, the harbinger of despair in Elyos, and bring all of the Emblem rings together. Although the story may seem predictable at first, it's not long before some twists and turns make it feel notably different and fresh. While we won't give too many examples, it's intriguing how established the different kingdoms within Elyos are. You have a monarchy with leaders, crowned princes and princesses, and retainers that aid the established leadership in the day-to-day. Each realm has a unique atmosphere, making anything from interactions with the common folk to the major-scale moments fascinating. The main cast is extremely likable. The chapters that introduce each one does a good job establishing who they are in cutscenes, and you can deepen your bond through quick chats either on the battlefield or in the main hub. But unfortunately, not every character gets a spotlight on them beyond that. But that is where the pure brilliance of support conversations come in. You see, these conversations deepen the bond between characters and really allow you to see what makes them tick. They're shockingly in-depth, and allow the cast to have a complete story arc with a beginning, middle, and end. It's incredibly effective not just for world building, but making each character's story feel a little more personal. Such as Yunaka, who seems cheery on the surface during the main game, but the support conversations let you peel that layer away, revealing a darker truth underneath. On the other hand, you might discover that the twins, Clan and Fram, have an obsession with the Divine Dragon, and it is absolutely hilarious, even if a little creepy. One thing that could have been done better are the Emblem ring conversations that you can have with the different units. The Emblems are characters from previous Fire Emblem games, and they play a critical part to the story of Engage. The chats as they bond with units are shockingly short, lasting maybe 30 seconds at most, and as a result, they aren't pushed far enough. The Emblems sincerely discuss their history or how they were involved in the storylines of their own games. They are subtle hints about characters' growth that really get a kick out of Fire Emblem fans, but they might be a little over the head of others. All the same, the Emblem conversations could have been expanded a bit, mostly to see how the connections between unit and Emblem have grown. To be fair, each Emblem does get its own paralogue later in the game, but these additional bits and pieces really add to the appetite. As always, overcoming the enemy is a battle of wits and positioning, but Fire Emblem Engage brings back the classic weapon triangle, and its rock paper scissors style of gameplay, rather than the new system that Three Houses introduced. And I appreciated the return to form, as it's just a clearer, less confusing system. But that isn't to say it's identical, as there are plenty of new mechanics that keep it feeling fresh for even longtime fans. A small yet significant change is that you can now directly control the units, instead of just laying out a path for them. It allows you to have more nuanced control and position units 100% the way you want. Furthermore, weapons don't break this time, which is a great thing as you can experiment as you see fit, without wasting any usage. That being said, staffs do still need to be replaced in the item store, so you're not completely scot-free. And having those staffs is rather crucial, because, healing your units would be nice and all. The new break mechanic is a major game changer, as it allows you to destroy the stance of your opponent, making them drop their weapon and be entirely defenseless. But they're not easy to pull off, as not only does it require your unit's weapon to overpower the opponent's, but your unit also needs to be in an advantageous position on the map. An icon on the map screen shows when you have it right, and this mechanic can be essential, allowing you to attack with units that might otherwise lose in a matchup. But the opponent can break your stance all the same, ensuring you need to be careful with the placement of your units, as the consequences are far more devastating than ever before. Emblem rings are another new and important factor. There's around a dozen or so, each representing a different character, and by putting one on a unit, it not only awards different buffs, but also transforms into a form that assembles that character or emblem in question in what's called the engage state, which lets you unleash a super powerful attack. Take Lyn, for example, who, when in the engage state, allows you to clone your unit to confuse your opponent. While they only have 1 HP each, they can still fight back and wipe out additional units from the battlefield, which is especially potent if paired with a unit that can dodge well, making it difficult for the enemy to apply pressure. Another example we enjoyed was Silica, who allows you to warp to a specific spot on the field and attack an adjacent opponent right there and then. Each emblem will help out of a bind in a different fashion, so playing around with their tools is the best way to learn. Because the rings can basically be attached to any character in any possible combination, it not only makes for a really fun and distinct battle experience compared to past Fire Emblems, but it can also lead to some highly entertaining bond conversations. As the units and the emblems bond over time from interacting on the battlefield, it will eventually grant the unit new abilities and proficiencies. These proficiencies allow the unit to grow into different weapon types, giving them access to currently out-of-reach battle classes. And the entire process feels much more organic than in Three Houses, where characters had to attend school classes to learn those skills, which felt repetitive and even grindy. Of course, you can stick to the chosen path of your character and have one additional upgrade to make the unit the intended way, but it's much more fun to play around with the game's unique systems and have a character that plays with unintended classes, and see how far you can push the variables, especially as it often results in a more rounded character too. I could go on, but the overall point is that the emblem rings have turned a system that I generally found to be rough into something that I genuinely enjoyed because of how naturally it fits in. In terms of sheer ability, Fire Emblem Engage has one of the most well-rounded casts of characters in the entire series. After just the first 8 chapters, you will already have access to 18 different characters, which provide a ton of freedom. The Queendom of Solm, which is a place you will visit later in the story, has a good chunk of the units I ended up sticking with. One of my favorites was the Wolf Knight Merrin, who can move quite swiftly across the field, uses both swords and knives, and is pretty good at dodging most attacks. It doesn't hurt that her animations look cool as hell as well. And each character's distinct personality comes through in their voice acting. Rosado, one of the adversaries you meet along the way, has such a wonderfully camp voice that fits the design so incredibly well. The characters don't always take themselves seriously, and that's part of why they're so enjoyable. With so many new characters, you might find yourself constantly pivoting to the next new thing, but there are maps that basically force you to swap out to specific characters, so thinking that extra step ahead is crucial to make it through Fire Emblem Engage. Learn the opponent's weaknesses, then adopt your playing style, and change up your team. The constant changes in lineup, approach, and overall strategy are what make Fire Emblem Engage's gameplay very exciting. There is a thrill in overcoming a particular harsh opponent and nailing that battle strategy you kept cooking. It isn't the hardest game in the series, but at the same time, you feel like you can overcome any particularly nasty hurdles effectively. There are cannons, obscured views, and even some spikes for good measure. Engage is fair, well, most of the time at least. At minimum, never a dull moment. Outside a battle, all of the main actions take place on a world map, which is a welcome return from the boring menus and hubs of Three Houses. The ease of browsing, selecting a battle, and reading any additional information provided is quick and to the point, and it's here that you'll find 3 types of battles available. Chapters, which further the story, paralogs, which are basically side quests, and skirmishes that allow you to battle whenever you want to earn additional resources that you might need to get more artillery. The battles offered constant variety, and allowed for pauses and pacing. While paralogs and chapters are set in the amount they pop up, skirmishes have the advantage of allowing you to grow without high-octane story beats taking place. One of the coolest additions is being able to walk around the very battlefields you just fought on. For the first time ever, they are full 3D environments that you can observe, explore, and interact with to your heart's content. You'll encounter villagers who are picking up the pieces, items across the landscape, units that will comment on the battle now that it's concluded, and animals to pick up for your base. And despite some muddy ground textures, it is an absolute treat to explore these areas, particularly after completing the grueling chapters in the main story, as it offers a nice break from the action that fits in incredibly well, especially since they help to flesh out details that the story otherwise skims over, making Elios that much more of a living, breathing world. And I don't want to spoil anything, but let me tell you that there is something that this game does that was absolutely thrilling to behold as a longtime Fire Emblem fan. If you need a full stop break from slicing your foes, then you might want to stop at the Somniel, which is your home base for a breather. And you can do all kinds of different things here, such as leveling up in the arena to prepare for the next battle, craft rings for non-engaged characters in the ring chamber, buy or upgrade gear, donate money to the various kingdoms for some fun extras, and even partake in some minigames. And also take care of a virtual pet spirit thing? Yeah, his name's Sami. Sami the Spirit. And he's yours to take care of by feeding it or dressing it up in a hilarious outfit. Unfortunately, the interactions are pretty limited and quickly get repetitive, so I grew bored of him pretty quickly. But at least you do get rewarded for taking care of him, whether it's with items or him taking responsibility for any mistakes you make in the minigames, allowing you to continue without issue. Speaking of which, the minigames are quite a bit of fun and include things like fishing, strength training, and shooting targets on the back of a wyvern. The strength training in particular even has 3 different activities with different inputs, depending on how you want to play. In any case, I enjoyed all of them, especially as they include difficulty options that increase as you progress through the game. And they're not just for fun, as they'll grant you buffs or items that your units can use in the next battle. Speaking of which, your units might just have some important information for you about the upcoming battles, or chapters too. Otherwise, you can load them up with gifts, invite them for a bite to eat, or trigger the wonderful support conversations. Furthermore, if you want even more action, the Tower of Trials might be for you. There were 3 options: Tempest Trial, Relay Trial, and Outrealm Trial. With the Tempest Trial, players will have to finish maps back to back, set on a difficulty of their choosing, and it is a great way to earn experience, though it comes with a catch. You can't hot swap characters, and any characters that perish during your Tempest run won't come back for the next map. It is a constant act of knowing when to strike. Regardless of the difficulty you choose initially, the Tempest Trials demand a performance worthy of its rewards, but the Tempest Trials can be surprisingly long and tiring, so you really need to be ready to take them head on. The other 2 trials are tied to the game's take on online multiplayer, although there sadly isn't a way to compete with other players in a direct fashion. Even still, both options provide a nice distraction and reward trinkets for participating. A slight disappointment is that you can't earn any experience, unlike the Tempest Trials. Regardless of what you choose, there are a multitude of ways to connect, allowing for codes that you can hand out, as well as random encounters. The Relay Trial sees multiple players taking 2 turns of a battle map. One player starts with 5 characters, before handing it off to the next entrant who can add another 2 units on top. The map needs to be cleared in a set amount of turns, so keeping the action thoughtfully efficient is of absolute importance. It takes a while to complete a relay, but there is something fun about how different players approach a map. Depending on their skill, they might leave well off or on the brink of a complete disaster. With the Outrealm Trials, you will take on the teams of other players, which are chosen randomly from those who decided to be connected online. In the custom battle mode, you even get to make your own battlefield, which your opponents have to overcome. With only 5 units and a limited time to win, your strategies need to be adapted differently. Plus, as these are your opponent's units that they have used throughout the game, they might have an additional trick or 2. You always have to be 2 steps ahead. The replay value is a necessity, simply because Fire Emblem Engage doesn't offer a New Game Plus function. It means that any progression you make is stuck on that particular save file. This is somewhat disappointing, considering there is no active way to replay chapters and paralogs that you completed in the current save. Once you finish them and save your game, you can only go back to that locale if a skirmish just happens to take place there. Considering that there are events that happen only once, not having a chance to restart with the build-up team is an annoyance. You could further build on their class skills, continue the support with the characters that you barely used last time, and take a different approach now that you know how battles play out. Fire Emblem Engage is a bit stuck in its endgame phase upon completion, so the bonuses you receive beyond the credits might feel as little too late. The entire presentation is great across the board, whether it's the striking visuals or the excellent music and voice acting that truly add another layer. We can't stress enough over and over how amazing the art style really is. The environments are vast, animations of the characters look great in motion, and it all runs quite smoothly. The music is part of the world's character, changing from lighthearted to cruel just on a whim. The soundtrack has a very orchestrated feel to it, which is incredibly welcome. Unfortunately, one drag on the entire experience is money. Or should I say, the lack thereof. You'll use it to purchase gifts for your characters, donate to kingdoms, and to purchase gear for your next fight. And annoyingly, you will almost always come up short for the upkeep you want to achieve, which only gets worse in the later half of the game, where we were scrambling as the amount of elements you can use for money increases significantly. Now of course, unlimited funds wouldn't make for great game design either, but the balance just didn't feel quite right to me, as the constant worry of running out of funds definitely impacted my enjoyment a bit. Thankfully, when it comes to real money, Fire Emblem Engage provides an amazing value, offering an adventure that felt fresh across the over 65 hours it took us to finish it, and we aren't even close to seeing every support conversation or class that's possible. Fire Emblem Engage went above and beyond to provide one of the most compelling experiences in the entire series. Where Three Houses could feel overwhelming with the amount of choices at every step, Engage feels more like an adventure, with a lovable cast that comes together for a common goal. The majority of the characters are fantastic, and that helps elevate the support conversations to new heights. Although the action might be slow in the early goings, the tactical gameplay is perhaps the most refined it's ever been, making the return of the classic elements the most engaging they've ever been. Especially since the addition of new elements like the break mechanic not only feel fresh, but force you to approach things perhaps in a unique way. And with a substantial hub world, the Return of the World map, and fully explorable 3D battlefields, the world feels more lively and believable, helping further immerse me in the story. And the presentation is impressive overall, with a stunning variety of color across its many environments. That doesn't mean Fire Emblem Engage isn't without its missteps. Having enough money is nearly a constant struggle, and Sami felt a bit pointless. In addition, the lack of a New Game Plus is disappointing, especially after Three Houses introduced it. Fire Emblem Engage attempts to make up for this with the trial components, even if it isn't quite up to the task. And while I love the story, I still wish the Emblem Bond scenes were a bit longer. But despite that, I loved Fire Emblem Engage from beginning to end. The excellent gameplay is elevated by an intriguing story, including weird implications for the entire Fire Emblem ethos. It'll be tough for Intelligent Systems to top what they've done here with future sequels, as they have expertly weaved elements from all over the franchise's history, and compiled it into something that will almost certainly please Fire Emblem veterans, while still being accessible to newcomers, and I can't wait to play it even more. But with that, thank you all for watching our review of Fire Emblem Engage. Stay tuned to GameXplain for plenty more on this and other Switch games as well. Until next time, farewell.